Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in about a moment. We have about 105 participants in the community, so we're just going to every 30 seconds or a minute we'll start the presentation. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today. This is an important conversation to have. For those who followed one of the 15 presentations last week, it's going to follow the same kind of format. Going to be our place where you can ask questions. We have several individuals and assistant directors from the district who are taking the questions that are pre-populated Google Doc. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to go through those questions and hopefully answer as many as we can. Okay? So, and just so everybody is aware, I've taken some of the slides from last week's presentation, specifically regarding special education, and continued them just to reinforce the message. And last week's presentation was, just really comprehensive. So many answers were answered in that slide. What we're going to do today is just focus on the special education aspect of that presentation. So as I go through the first couple of slides here, you're going to see, as indicated last week, we had 15 presentations to the community. We have 2 additional presentations, especially got one today at 10 and another one at 4 p.m. So if you want to come back at 4 o'clock, that means I'm doing it. What we're looking to do, I know last week was a pretty comprehensive presentation, although given specifically. Okay, so my audio is coming out garbled. Just hold on one second. I'm getting some technical assistance here from our own assistant superintendent, Mr. Gary McKenna. So hold on one moment. Okay, so sorry for that, everyone. Gordon, Darren, there's some buzzing coming through the presentation, so we're going to swap out laptops just so the communication is clear. We're back on. Okay, great. So we can thank the very talented Mr. Don Lakima with his quick swap out. Hold on one second. Okay. Great. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lakima. So I Apologize for the interruption there. I'll make sure I got my presentations up and running. Great. So what we want to do with the presentation again is really answer some of the questions specific to special education. Last week's presentations were really painting a broad brush for the whole district. As we always say, all students are general ed students. Some receive special education services, but there were real specific questions that really drilled down to the needs of special ed students. So hopefully this presentation will provide those answers for you. And then in the chat box, by all means, please share your question. Like I said, and at the presentation, we'll hopefully be able to answer as many of those as we can. As we all know, and it was reinforced last week, and all schools have always been and will continue to be required to provide what's called a free and appropriate public education. However, in the time of COVID, that is connected with the need to protect the health and safety of students and the staff that work with them. So clearly, during the pandemic and the different levels of education, whether it be virtual and or hybrid, we have to do both of those at the same time. So it's truly a much more complex endeavor moving forward. In addition to that, we need to do it as we've always done with meaningful parental engagement. So clearly CSE meetings will continue as they always have, as well as CPSE meetings. We're looking for a collaboration with parents and teachers across the district. And whether we're virtual or hybrid, an IEP is an IEP and the expectations are the same moving forward. So nothing changes. The format by which education is delivered is going to be different, obviously through like what we're doing right now, a virtual platform. But the IEP is the IEP, education is education. The expectations are the same as if we were all live and in person. And I know Mr. Lakima mentioned this last week, as far as the necessary instructional and technological supports. Just as many of you are aware, most of our special education students who have needs for devices, say a Chromebook and or an iPad, they have them on their IEPs and they've had them for years. So for students where the committee has determined that students needed to have at their disposal their own device, those are purchased through the special education department and listed on student IEPs. So in those cases, those students have the technology they needed home to connect with the virtual world. In addition, and I know Mr. Lakima and his department are doing another round, I think we have loaned out something like 1,000 to 1,500 Chromebooks. And we have some more in the buildings, and I do believe they're going to survey the families to find out who needs additional Chromebooks. So once again, we are trying to meet that need for technology, considering that we're going to go virtual and people need that additional technology. As far as the considerations in the bottom, and that's something that was reinforced last week moving forward, and it was reinforced in the state's reopening plans issued in July, that the focus as we move into the 2021 school year was to really ensure to the greatest extent possible that students where this platform was not the greatest are considered first. So as you saw last week in the reopening PowerPoint from Mr. Lakima, and you're going to hear that again today, as we phase in students, we're going to really focus on those students that are the most needy. So once again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Phase 1, phase 2 starts about mid-September, end of September. We indicated that would be K1-2. Well, that is K1-2 inclusive of ICT students, so students who are classified through the committee who are in an ICT integrated co-taught class, they're coming in, as well as the self-contained students. And something that we need to look at with respect to teachers and transportation, because this is fairly complex, but wherever we have the opportunity to potentially stretch that and maybe bring in another grade level or two, as long as everybody is safe and we have good processes in place, we're going to look to do that. In addition, if it's possible, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on also, depending upon the students in the self-contained class and some of the needs, if we can extend that out from beyond an AB, an AB model cohort and potentially bring them in for 4 days, a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule, assuming that that's permissible with social distancing and wearing masks, we're also going to look to do that to the greatest extent possible, knowing that those students are really the ones that we want to focus on as far as ensuring that their needs are being taken care of. So as I just mentioned, the hybrid model, 2 cohorts in A and B. A is going to come in on Mondays and Tuesdays. B is in Thursdays and Fridays, with Wednesdays being a virtual day. That is inclusive of special education students. And we have to start someplace as we look at, dividing the school up appropriately. So clearly we're going to start with last names. A to K would be in the A cohort, Mondays and Tuesdays. L to Z in the B cohort. However, there are going to be times when we need to make a case-by-case decision, say with families. So if, we have people who may have different last names, we're not going to want to have one student, a first grader, come to school on a Monday or Tuesday, have a fifth grader come to school on a Thursday and Friday, knowing what kind of impact that's going to have with the family with respect to daycare. So clearly, the cohort with respect to last name is where we're going to start, but there will be case-by-case decisions that will need to be made, and especially with respect to special education students. As far as goals, this was a question that came up a lot from parents. And, once again, goals were written. We had our annual meetings last year. I don't think anybody anticipated that we were going to be virtual at the beginning of the 2021 school year. I can tell you from my own point of view, when schools were officially closed for the rest of 1920, I assumed, like I think many people assumed, that we'd be back in school full-time come September. So when it comes to goals in an IEP, they're written for the year. Some of them are written, maybe they take parts at different points in the curriculum. However, with respect to teachers and other service providers, and that'll be reinforced later on in this presentation as well, you're going to have to look at those goals as we start the school year virtually, knowing that we want to come in a hybrid model, and really determine what makes the most sense to start out through a virtual platform. I can tell you, and I have another slide to that in a moment, last year when we created our continuity of learning plan, it was literally on the fly. Nobody anticipated schools to be closed from March 13th for the rest of the school year. We all thought it would be maybe a couple of 2-week increments, but at some point we would all be back. So we had to create a plan literally on the fly. However, we've learned some lessons over those 3.5 months, and we put them into good use during the summer program. So our summer school program, traditional, students 9 through 12, much more synchronous as far as trying to address student need, and especially too with our extended school year program, which is called ESY for students who might show regression, and they come to school in the summertime to make sure that the skills they've developed during the course of the year are maintained, so when they start school in September, they're simply not that far behind. So we took those lessons learned. Clearly, they were much more smaller cohorts. I think ESY for our special education students had about 165 students. Once again, it's all virtual. We had speech services, OT services, PT services, as well as special education instruction. And once again, we were able to increase the amount of synchronous learning opportunities. And the feedback I received from Ms. Michelle Costabile, she's one of our special education teachers here, and she facilitates the summer school program, as well as parents and teachers to her, and then she to me. It was a much more gratifying and productive experience. We took some of those lessons and applied them to what we're going to start with next week. And as I indicated, many students have many goals in their IEP. So teachers and service providers are going to take a look and just make decisions about what seems to be the appropriate place to start. So there is some flexibility here. And when we come into in-person learning, clearly the providers, as appropriate, can pivot and then use that in-person opportunity to focus on a different area of need. This was the big one that happened last year. So when they closed schools physically, and nobody could come in, we were in, just doing all the virtual learning. We had many students who had initial referrals to the CSC as well as reevaluations. For any student who needed to have an in-person assessment, so if we're assessing for a learning disability, you need to have a cognitive assessment and one of achievement. There's no way around that. And clearly, to do a cognitive assessment, I'm also a certified school psychologist. You need to be able to come into an office, and that's where the school psychologist could use one of their assessments take a look at your cognitive functioning. Those tests were not normed and or developed on a virtual platform. So really, there wasn't much flexibility there to do them over the web. They would have been not reliable and not valid information, and the committee simply can't make decisions based upon information that really just isn't that valid. So as per the governor's order, schools can reopen. So although the Wapato Central School District is starting virtually, given all of the constraints that we need to address before we start bringing children in, schools can know and are open. So we are working with the school psychologists and the building principals, as well as the assistant directors of special education, to once again create those lists of students at the buildings who were being referred for initial referrals to special ed, and/or those students who needed a reevaluation. Maybe the committee was looking to make a decision with respect to, say, a more restrictive placement, and they wanted to have additional data. They're going to simply get a sense of those students, prioritize their needs, and then once school opens up, the goal is to simply have the school psychologists come in, make appointments with parents, and then start that process up again and complete it. Based upon some of the disinfectant issues we're going to have to do in schools, I don't see there being more than one student per day being assessed. The assessment process does take some time. It can be, an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So ensuring health and safety, I don't think we're going to want to have multiple students in the room unless we can clean it. There may be an opportunity to do that, and if there is, clearly we're going to want to be able to assess as many students as we can during the course of a day. However, right now, moving forward, my assumption is that we probably have one student per day per building to get those initial evals finished, and then be able to schedule the CSC meetings as appropriate and move from there. Okay, I talked about this a little bit before about the students who were struggling with the virtual model. Really, they thrive with in-person personal contact education, and the whole virtual platform was not as conducive as it could have been. So what we've done, once again, as indicated, putting together last year's plan was really, once again, it just kind of fell into our lap as it did for everybody else. And, we had to simply get something up and running rather quickly. We learned lessons from those 3.5 months. As indicated, we applied them to ESY and our summer school program, both based upon the information that was received back was much more productive, and people, parents, students, teachers all felt it was a much more enriched experience. So we're taking those lessons learned and applying them to how we engage in our continuity of learning plan for the start of the 2021 school year, with the hope that what we did over the summertime will be duplicated as we begin the school year off, and that many, many more parents and students are going to have a much more productive and satisfying and gratifying experience as you start the school year virtually. And then when we come back in and phase into real person education, and clearly, I think for those students, and that's why we're going to focus on those students coming in first, I think people will be much more satisfied that we're kind of back to normal, whatever normal may actually mean. But that is the goal, to take those lessons learned over last spring, and definitely, things that we put into place over the summertime, and actually grow and expand them as we start the 2021 school year. How will related services, speech counseling, OT, PT be provided? Once again, as we're virtual, they're all going to happen through the virtual platform. As we indicated, service providers are going to have an opportunity. They know the students, especially in the speech counseling and OT and PT. Many times, unlike students who they move up from year to year and have a new teacher, oftentimes, especially at the younger grades, the speech therapist is the same individual. Counseling, usually it's from a school psychologist or social worker. They have some history with the student, as well as OT and PT. So that history and that sense of knowledge is going to be important as they start the new school year off, and really determine what's the best way to kick this year off in a successful, level of engagement. Right, we're going to be here now for 10 months. As all of you, the only thing I hope for is to get back to a normal life and open up our schools. But until that time comes, this is what we're doing. And the goal, once again, is to hope that the data stays consistent so we can have a hybrid model come the middle of September. So once again, our service providers who know the students are going to take a look and see what the goals are during the course of the year, take a look at their need, take a look at the platform, and make pragmatic decisions on how best to move forward. And that's that flexibility they have. What we don't want to do is start the school year off and try to work on something that simply maybe the platform is just not as conducive as in-person services are, and just start the year off in an awkward place. So, much like addressing the social emotional learning needs of students is going to be important at the beginning of the school year. And as we indicated last week, not at the expense of academics, but to support academics. Well, the same thing too with special education students and all the services. We want to start the year off successfully. We want people to feel satisfied and happy, and that's going to require some meaningful thought about, okay, so how do we start, knowing that we need people to be engaged and to feel as if this is really meaningful and useful. So once again, that question was, how will mandated IP services be provided by staff at schools on a virtual platform? I think I've indicated that. That's been a common theme here with special education students. So once again, as we're virtual, it's virtual for everybody. I have had some parents ask questions to say, well, Arlington was, for example, just using Arlington as a name, they were going to go virtual, but they were going to bring in some, say, special education students. Once again, if that was true, well, that means that school is starting on a hybrid model, right? And clearly, Wappingers, as the superintendent, Mr. Lakima, indicated last week, just given our size and just the complexity of everything that we do, virtual made the most sense as far as being able to ensure the health and safety of everybody involved. So as I talked about, people are going to start, hopefully, as we've learned as lessons, is going to be much more graded daily synchronous, connection to a teacher and to a service provider. And once again, those lessons we've learned, I feel are going to simply inform our practice now. So it's a much more meaningful and gratifying experience for all involved. As far as now PPE, so just so you know, and I know we discussed this last week, we've got the PPE. We have masks. We have ordered and have the clear masks. So say a speech therapist needs to be able to, a student needs to be able to see their lips move as they're pronouncing certain sounds. We're in the process of ordering. I think we've already gotten them in. The masks with the clear, transparent around the mouth, so the student can see the therapist's lips if they're pronouncing sounds. We've got the clear face shields that they would need to wear in addition, because clearly if students are saying things and they're projecting, aerosol in the air, that's something that somebody may want to have. We have gloves, we have gowns. So we have plenty of PPE for all of our staff, and even for students. So for students who we need to see, their lips and see how they're pronouncing words, say in a speech session, for those parents who don't have those masks, we would provide them. So with respect to PPE and our service providers and our special ed staff, as well as our special ed students, we have more than enough to start the year off. And depending upon how this evolves over weeks and months, we will order as appropriate. But as of right now, we are well stocked with all the essential PPE for both staff and students. Once again, people are required to wear face coverings. I know the guidance document indicated that for those who can't, for those students who can't, there's a medical reason why they can't wear a mask. Then they can't wear a mask. And clearly the people working with them are going to need to wear a mask and have other forms of protective PPE, as well as maybe some of the students. And we'll just need that information from your physician indicating why they can't wear a mask. Students will be required to socially distance. It is required. I mean, that's how we're going to keep each other safe. And I was thinking about this morning too. We have two wonderful behavior specialists in the district, Ms. Melanie Pagano and Brittany Leonard. And think about, when they used to work with, trying to change and modify behavior in classrooms so students to be more academically engaged. Depending upon when we have our hybrid model and students come into the buildings, you know, their services are going to pivot and help support, you know, students, teachers, and parents on, you know, maximizing, you know, some of our students' ability to wear PPE. You know, we're going to have students where that's going to be a challenge, and that's what we're going to want to support because, you know, I want to ensure that when we go hybrid, our most neediest students are here, you know, as often as possible, receiving the education that they need. So we have the people who are just going to shift their focus, you know, and maybe work with the teacher, a parent, and a student on how we can, you know, have a student who, you know, to improve upon that time wearing a mask, right? Just so it's going to go to their safety, it's going to improve the safety and health of everybody else in the classroom. So we do have people who can shift their focus to help support face covering and social distancing with some of our neediest students. As far as in-person instruction, that's come up a lot with parents. As the superintendent and Mr. Lukema and Dr. Cardwell shared last week, that little phase-in page diagram, sorry, where phase 1 was virtual, phase 2 would be K1-2. Like I said, probably the middle of September. Phase 3 would be 3-4. Phase 4 would be 5 and 6. That would complete the K6 model. You know, right now that's the plan, and I've indicated before, as appropriate, if we can stretch those limits and maybe bring in a couple more students, maybe another grade level of self-contained, thinking about them special education students, we are going to try to do so. Clearly, we need to make sure that before we try to stretch this out, our processes and procedures are good. We can ensure health and safety of all involved. We don't want to jump off and try to do too much too soon because, you know, we don't want to pause our own processes simply because we try to simply, you know, like I said, do too much too soon. However, as appropriate, I'm talking to transportation, they are building their bus runs for a typical school year. They needed to think that way. So once again, from a transportation point of view, that's being built and up and running. And as I indicated, as long as we can ensure health and safety of our students and staff, where possible, we're going to try to get as many people in as soon as possible. Teaching assistants. So one of the things, you know, many of our special education students, many of our ICT classes, and most, if not all of our self-contained classes, have teaching assistants in the classroom. They're not going anyplace. They're going to stay connected to the students and or the classrooms and help provide additional small time, especially in a virtual environment, small time direct synchronous instruction. So we have some of our self-contained classes, especially our K, our 1-2s, our 3-4s, easily have a teacher, you know, maybe have 10, 12 students, some cases 15, and could have 2 or 3, 4 teacher assistants. So they're going to be, they're there, they're not going anyplace. They help support instruction. Teaching assistants can deliver second teaching and pedagogy and are going to be used, once again, especially in those self-contained and ICT classes, to ensure, once again, that there's a greater level of daily contact between the children, the families, and school personnel, and especially with respect to synchronous learning. So the good thing about having those self-contained classes with all those teacher assistants is that now you simply have, you know, many other people, professionals that you can use to simply, you know, meet with students on a daily basis in either both large and small groups. As far as nursing goes, once again, we do have some students who have nursing services on their IEPs. Those aren't going anyplace. So clearly during virtual instruction, they may not be, you know, they're not going to the houses. However, once we go hybrid, you know, IEPs aren't being changed, right? There's only one individual educational plan. So if someone has access to skilled nursing services, and we start our, you know, phase 2 hybrid, you know, rollout, well, when they come into the school, they're going to have access to skilled nursing services. None of that's going to change by virtue of balancing between a virtual and a hybrid model. What's on the IEP is on the IEP. They were developed by the committees last year, and they're not modified. There's no such thing as a virtual IEP and an in-person IEP. an IEP is an IEP. Let me go to the next slide here. Another frequent question has been about collaboration and scheduling. So people have asked, will teachers have an opportunity to collaborate with one another? If I'm an ICT teacher, if I have a resource room, I'm thinking now about the high school. If I'm a high school student and I have a resource room teacher, or I have consultant teacher services, will they be able to talk and collaborate with my, say, math teacher as typical? And the answer is yes. So whether we're virtual or in person in a hybrid model, once again, the educational system hasn't changed. Teachers will then collaborate. It'll be different. I'm not going to walk down a hallway, knock on the door of a peer and talk about a student and maybe share some ideas. I'm going to do it like we're doing it right now. I'm going to schedule a virtual meeting, a Google Meet. I may send an email. I may phone call. I may FaceTime. So clearly the process by which we collaborate changes, but collaboration doesn't change. So teachers will talk to one another to ensure that they understand student needs. So if I'm a resource room teacher and I have a student who's got some particular needs that probably are going to manifest in, say, a science class, I'm absolutely going to collaborate with that science teacher just so they understand where the student is at. So they're off to, they're going to have a really good, solid start to the school year under any model, right? So that's always going to continue, and that is not going to change no matter what platform we're on. That's the expectation. Transportation too. This is probably the most common question that's come up because, as the superintendent, Mr. Lakima, reinforced last week, depending upon a handful of students, we're either the 8th or 9th largest district in New York State. And we are the largest district with respect to our own privately owned transportation department. No other school district in New York State owns a transportation department as big as Wappingers. So with size comes some benefit. It also adds a lot of constraints. However, as the New York State Education document that came out in July indicated, and this is really especially true for Wappingers, no matter what platform the home district chooses to start the school year off on, if all students, special ed inclusive, if they're out of district program and or provider, be it a Catholic school, be it a special education program, if they choose to want to start the school year off in a hybrid model and or a full in-person model, depending upon their own unique circumstances, then we have to give transportation. And I can tell you right now, I've been working with the transportation department, and they are building those schedules to ensure that all those out-of-district programs, and right now I'm speaking specifically for special education students, those programs that are starting the year off with either full in-person, which I don't think there are many, or a hybrid. And that's usually the common theme that I've been seeing through my emails, that most hybrid programs are going to be what we're going to eventually roll into, an A model for Monday, Tuesday, and a B model for Thursday, Friday. That transportation will be provided for those students. So we are working with the transportation department, and for those schools that are open, the expectation is that your child will be taken there as soon as school starts. That's the general picture I wanted to paint with respect to special education. I've got 2 slides here too, just so you know. My name is Mr. Richard Zip, Assistant Superintendent. I apologize for not doing it at the beginning. I think the quick turnaround with the screen time with Mr. Lakima kind of threw me off. Ms. Karen Smith, she's the Director of Special Education. For those, we have Mr. Tim Ferrin, longtime Assistant Director at RCK, Ms. Karen Brown at John Jay, Mrs. Julie Montoya. She usually works with many families who are out of district, as well as Dr. Leah Raftis. And then just so everybody in the community is aware, we have this past year we were joined by Mrs. Denise Robinson and Mrs. Shana Cruz. In addition, we were able to change some things up with our department, and we're going to bring in a new Assistant Director of Special Education, Mrs. Lauren Broadbelt. Should be starting here sometime around mid-September. So what I'm going to do is go to my questions. I got to pull up my other screen here. We have a little doc. And I'll answer, see if I can go through some of these questions right now. Answer them up as appropriate. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, we'll start in the top of the questions. See if I can answer. How will self-contained students be mainstreamed for specials in a hybrid model? So what we're looking to do when we come in, clearly, the goal is to bring students in and focus on core instruction first. Assuming that, so just so everybody knows, assuming that I'm going to think K to 6 broadly speaking, because there are phase 2, and phase 4, right? Phase 2 is K1, 2, phase 3 would be 3, 4, and then phase 4 would be 5, 6. So assuming as we phase in students that everything looks identical, right? So it's simply going to be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday schedule minus Wednesday, right? Wednesday, everybody's virtual. And the difference is that on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursday, Fridays, you only have half the class, right? And if everything else is identical and the same, then the expectations are the same. So if I have a full schedule in a hybrid model, and once again, I'm not part of curriculum instruction, we've had these conversations, I'm just kind of saying, but if gym is inclusive and art is inclusive and everything is back to normal just in a hybrid model, and if I'm a student in a self-contained class, and I mainstream into an ICT class during English, well, the expectation is that I'm going to, potentially mainstream in. However, right, and these are the constraints we have to deal with, right? Because going back to the Department of Health, they want us to maintain cohorts, right? So we have to be really careful about introducing new students into current existing cohorts, because that's going to be a confounding variable with respect to health and safety. So those are things we're going to have to think about clearly. Right now, we haven't come up with a definitive answer with that, because that's, because the health and safety may override how we do that, or maybe we have to do that in a different way. That's a good question. We're going to have some further conversation on that. The goal right now is to bring everybody in, and we're going to have to take a look and figure out what that looks like to introduce other students into other cohorts, even if it's a mainstreaming opportunity with respect to health and safety. So good question, more to come on that. And that's really number 2. What about students who have a split program, part of the day self-contained, part of the day ICT? It's the same kind of conversation, so we're going to have to look at those students because, once again, we need to maintain cohorts. We shared on the district website last week our contact tracing. If you went through the Department of Health guidance document back in July, they're really stressing that students stay together to the greatest extent possible, only because it's going to minimize on any kind of cross-contamination by just having other people come into the environment. As well, should any student or staff member test positive for COVID-19, we're going to work with the Department of Health as far as who they had contact with. So once again, a cohort of students, a teacher, we're going to want to give them information. So we can't have too many moving parts to this puzzle, right? And the good news is that for students who mainstream and/or might jump into an ICT class, most of it happens K6. So we're going to have to work with the teachers, and I know that can be one of the things we work on for our PD days scheduled up within the next week or two, and see is that, what does that look like? Now, the good news is that, it's not a question where I need to simply work with a different teacher. I'm looking to jump into different pedagogy and different levels of rigor. So there's nothing to say that that level of rigor couldn't come to you rather than you going to it. So just once again, creative ways to think about on how to keep IEPs intact. So once again, as indicated, and we're going to have the teachers work on that when they come in for those PD days, rather than me jumping out to the ICT class because it's a cohort and we're trying to keep students and staff healthy and safe. Is there a way to get the rigor from the ICT class, right, and bring that to me? So once again, those are the kind of questions and kind of solutions we're going to have to look for in order to, once again, keep students moving forward as they look to maximize their potential. Okay, we have. Okay, just a clarification, are all self-contained students going back September 28th, or are they going back for the respective grade levels? So the goal is going to be for clarification based upon the presentation of last week. At a minimum, right, when we're bringing in K-1-2 as phase number 2, that's inclusive of special education students, both ICT and self-contained K-1-2. However, once again, I'm saying however, depending upon, transportation and what the buildings look like and the students, if there's an opportunity to grow that a little bit more, right? Because my goal was to bring in, especially the self-contained K-6 students in as soon as possible. But clearly, it's got to be done thoughtfully and in a meaningful fashion for the health and safety of all people involved. However, as we look and as our day approaches, if there's an opportunity to grow that a little quicker, especially for self-contained special education students, that is going to be my goal. So those are conversations we're having with the transportation department and curriculum instruction to see if we can get them in sooner for their benefit. Once again, someone asked, are you saying that elementary students in self-contained classrooms will be attending school for 4 days a week? Right now, they will be because, once again, there are constraints. So if it's possible, once again, it depends upon student need and things in the classroom. Understand that our self-contained classrooms, we have some of our most students with our greatest needs. And those classrooms usually average around 12 to 15 students. So in the general ed class of, say, 25 to 27, bringing in 12 students per cohort seems to be the right fit. We're going to have to take a look at our self-contained classes, because if it's possible, where we can bring in 12 of our very most students with the greatest needs and keep them and everybody else health having health and safety be an issue, that's great. But right now, with this new model, having never done it, I can't give a firm answer for that. So the goal would be to have them come in for 4 days, rather than split them up. However, there may be circumstances where particular needs are going to drive what that class looks like. So those are things that we're also going to be working out on the PD days. The teachers have their students. They're going to collaborate with the teachers from last year, get a sense of what the needs are. And if it's possible, that would be my recommendation. I want them to come in as much as possible. However, I need to do that. Once again, that's the common theme here, ensuring that we can do that in a way where everyone's health and safety is taken care of. Okay, I think I answered that one about split programs part day. How would your ICT kids be given, he says, live? Okay, so if you're in an ICT class, once again, it's going to be virtual, just like it was last year. And the goal is going to be, I indicated earlier, that the lessons we've learned last spring, rolling this out for the first time ever as a complete and daily model of education, in addition to the improvements we made over the summertime. So in an ICT class setting, once again, it's going to be a general ed teacher and special ed teacher. They're the teachers in the classroom. Some of them have a teacher assistant, some may not. So wherever they have a teacher assistant, based upon student needs, they can use them to help reinforce pedagogy, small groups, as far as student contacts. And that's going to look like it did with improvements on daily synchronous instruction as compared to last spring. So once again, outside of improving the daily substantive contact with teachers and or individuals in the buildings, once again, you're going to have an ICT class, you're going to have two teachers, and it's going to look and feel like it typically has. Kids, right, so the way the cohort goes, I know that was instructed last week, is that if I'm coming to school on cohort A, I'm coming to school Mondays and Tuesdays. So Mondays and Tuesdays, I would have in-person live instruction, clearly with half the peers of my class. Wednesday, we're all going to be virtual, so that's an opportunity for the teacher to connect with students globally as far as a class. And then Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be virtual. What that looks like right now, that's part of the work we're going to do next week with all those PD days. I can't exactly say what that is because that's the work we're going to do. But clearly, when the teacher is teaching the other cohort of students, I would be home working virtually. I'm probably, pre-assigned work, and other things such as that. But that's the work we're doing with the additional PD days, as indicated last week, that are going to, I think, start next week for, I think, 4 to 5 days. Yeah, have we considered the multiple grade level classes split by cohorts, into cohorts by grade level rather than last name? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, for classes, what we're going to do too, so as far as splitting classes into the cohorts, the last names seem to make the most sense. Just so everybody's aware, especially considering our self-contained classes, we don't have in the self-contained classes, I'm thinking about classes at Oak Grove, we have 1, 2. It's not like we've got 7 first graders and 7 second graders. There's a bit of variability with the grade levels, and we're going to want to try to create balance. So clearly we have classes in some of the grades where out of 15 students in a self-contained class, 10 might be of a certain grade. So when we create these cohort models, we don't want things to be uneven, right? We're trying to create some sense of balance and equity here. And that goes back to my conversation earlier, that although the alphabet is the beginning of the conversation on how best to have an A and a B cohort, there will be exceptions made based on a case-by-case basis, just to ensure that children and families stay together. Because I know parents have indicated that, they need to have a devoted day or two if they're going to plan for daycare. It can't be random, as well as classes need to have a sense of balance. So, it doesn't make sense if on one day, you bring in 10, second graders from the self-contained class. They're going to come in all on the Monday, Tuesday schedule, and then on Thursday, Friday, the class, has 2 or 3 students, right? Because all the teachers are going to come in, and we're going to want to maximize the learning opportunities for all students. So clearly, we're going to look for some kind of balance, and that's going to have to be determined on a case-by-case basis. When the hybrid model is implemented, will also have special cases quit? Okay, so I think I answered that one. So 928, at a minimum, it would be K12, but as I indicated, if possible, I'm going to try to extend that up. Once again, everyone needs to be mindful that will be the first level phase-in of students at all. So, to bring in everybody K to 12 would definitely be a lot to chew on for the first time. And as I indicated earlier, we need to make this work well. Right? I need you to feel confident that what we're doing as far as our phase-in plans is appropriate, and I don't want there to be any bumps in the road. So at a minimum, it would be K12. If we could grow it, just so everybody's aware of my own thinking, if we could grow it, then I would grow 3, 4, 5, 6. I would start K and work my way up. Once again, but it depends, because there are other programs in other buildings, and depending upon building need, if they're ready for students and everything seems appropriate, then clearly I'm not gonna say no. But I do know that it has to work, and it has to keep all of your children safe. So if there's anything that seems to be where we're moving too fast, I can't jeopardize the wellness and safety of your children. So we're going to take some slow steps in the beginning, and as long as those steps work out well, and clearly it'll influence our process moving forward, then maybe we can kind of, expedite the process, so to speak. Well, 8th grade special ed phase in when Janet's. No, I think I just answered that one right now. So 8th grade special ed will not phase in when gen ed kindergarten does. If the classes only have 8 students in them, could they start when K2 starts? Once again, and I did answer that. So once again, depending upon the classes, we have 15 buildings and their level of readiness. If we can, clearly we're going to. But as we put together this plan, we needed to keep it simple. We needed to keep it something that we could execute in a well thought out manner, and we couldn't have too many pieces happening all at once. As I indicated, health and safety is paramount, and I wouldn't want to rush this and get it wrong. So once again, as appropriate, if we can grow this, we would. That's the conversation we're going to have with the building principals and the rest of the senior staff for the next coming weeks. But as of right now, when we go to phase 2 in the hybrid, if it's K1-2, at a minimum, it's going to be K1-2, right? And if we can bring in some additional students, I would definitely like to bring in 3rd and 4th graders. That just makes sense. And once again, we haven't had that conversation, but I'm willing to have the conversation. If we can, we can. But as of right now, I want everybody to understand that is simply not on top of the table right now. It may simply be too much planning to simply put together. One question says, are special education teachers reaching out to students at the high school for the resource and services? This did not happen in the spring unless we reached out, and I am concerned this will happen again now that I'm returning to work. So you're right. So last spring, we put together our continuity learning plan. We had to put that together rather quickly, given the state of emergency that was related to COVID-19. The goal is that everyone's going to simply be connected to teachers and the professional staff daily. So the expectation is that research room teachers will reach out, and then have direct substantive contact with students. What that looks like with each family is different. I know that people have different experiences and different set of circumstances that they're working with. But the goal is, and that is the plan, is to have much more synchronous, direct, daily contact between students and teachers. So hopefully, it's one thing to reach out, but you shouldn't have to reach out all the time. Okay, should they expect the same amount of service with the same quality staff delivering as if live? If the goal is the same, the thing that we're going to have to think about going virtual, I'm taking a look at my time right now, about almost 11, we're good, is that, if I'm a speech therapist, I may have, 50 students, if not more, in my caseload, and trying to create and duplicate what I would do in school at home has its own set of, considerations. So we have, to no fault of their own, parents, families, and students, who simply, may not be able to, tune into a particular schedule I have due to real and valid issues. And we're going to try to work around that. So the goal, much like last year, was to ensure, once again, to the greatest extent possible, right? We're trying to maximize what students get on the IEP, but there are going to be conflicts with people, once again, due to no fault of their own, and those are going to have to be thought about. So, there may have to be some creative solutions to some of those problems. If I'm putting together a class or a service and I have a small group, it's one thing to work at a small group with a couple of teachers in school. It's another thing to work at a small group of 3 students now with families who have their own responsibilities. They have multiple children in the house. Maybe they all don't have their own device. That's a constraint that changes the conversation. So there's going to have to be some compromise somewhere. I don't want anybody left out of the conversation. And in order to do that in an equitable fashion, at some point there's going to have to be a compromise someplace. We're going to know more about that when school starts and people create their schedules. But it is something that we're going to need to consider, moving forward. Okay, so if you allow special ed students to come back earlier than gen ed students, they would be able to practice it. Yeah, so we've answered that too. So right now we're virtual, and once again, we're going to begin the phase 2 in a hybrid model, K1-2. We wanted to bring in the young children. Clearly, that's really important for them to be in a structured educational setting. At that time as well, the self-contained students. So that is the phased-in plan as of right now. Okay, thank you for explaining that the IEP translates equal to IEP. So should they expect the same amount of service with the same quality? Yep. I think I just answered that all things being equal, no problems with scheduling. If I'm working with students, I'm a speech therapist, and I can get everybody into the individual and group sessions, and there are no constraints, i.e., there are no double conflicts with, parents, their work schedules, daycare, their other children. Absolutely. For the vast majority of our students in a virtual platform, speech can be delivered, instruction can be delivered, reading services can be delivered. However, I want to just say that there are things that are going to happen, just given the nature of what we're all living through, that are going to require just some, thoughtful, engagement with how best to keep this as fair and equitable to everybody, knowing that there are going to be many, many individual circumstances that are what they are. Once again, as indicated, due to no fault of their own, that then we need to come up with some creative solutions. So we're asking everybody to give us, to be patient with us as we build this again, with the goal that the numbers in the infection rates stay low, so we can begin our phase-in model. And then once we begin our phase-in model, and that would be my goal, my fingers crossed, that we stay there and at a very minimum do that for several weeks to several months. So what services will be provided virtually? All services will be provided virtually. So so the district is starting virtually, so that's everything. So it's education, it's all related services, it's counseling. Some services, as indicated before, don't lend themselves to a virtual model. So I have students who, a handful of students who have skilled nursing services. Clearly, while they're home, they're not going to receive their skilled nursing services. When they come back into school, absolutely. But for everything else, speech, OT, PT, counseling, education, instruction, it's all going to be virtual until it's not, as vis-a-vis the phase-in hybrid model. Will therapists travel between schools? It kind of goes back into the question of cohorts. So most of our speech, social workers and school psychologists, for the most part, they're assigned to buildings. The related service providers where that impacts the most are our physical therapists and occupational therapists. So we're going to have to think really hard about their services. Clearly, the other ones and some of the students that they service, that probably, it wasn't optimal on a virtual landscape. It probably reached the level of, good enough. This was good, but clearly in person, for OT and PT is probably the preferred, method. So we're going to have to think clearly, because they are the ones that do travel between buildings, because we're going to have to ensure that, once again, minimizing any kind of cross-contaminants, we have as few moving parts as possible. That would be the work that during our PD days that the OT and PT department, look at. Are there ways where, I'm not traveling between buildings daily, I travel between buildings on separate days, right? It might be easier from the cleaning and disinfectant and cohort model if I'm at one building one day and I take care of all my students in the hybrid model, and then I go to another building. So scheduling is going to come into focus, with the goal being that, once again, we're trying to minimize as many moving parts as possible. So as a physical therapist, under the old model prior to COVID-19, I might have been in 3 or 4 schools a day. We're going to have to minimize that and do that in a manner that truly protects the health and safety of all involved. I think I got time for one more question here, and then I'm going to sign off. I think I answered that. Okay, my son does not have an IEP, but he has a 504 plan. I've not heard anything about how they're going to address those. So just so you know, students with 504 plan and reasonable accommodations, the vast majority of them are going to come into school. So they don't have services. I mean, they may see a social. So most of our 504 plans, because I read and approve all the 504 plans for the district, and most of the ADA coordinator for students. Most of them may have a consult with an OT. They may work with say a social worker or a school counselor. Well, that's going to continue. So in many cases, students with 504 plans have reasonable accommodations, i.e., like, copy of class notes. They make it extra time for a test. They may get a flexible setting to take a test, due to the nature of the disability. They may get preferential seating, things of that nature. Where they do have and are connected to a staff member, say they receive a consultation in occupational therapy, or, they don't need to have weekly, services with a social worker, but they have check-ins, right? So the social worker says, listen, so, I don't need to see you every week, but I'm going to check in on you once a month. That's all going to continue. So much like an IEP, if your 504 plan says, consultation, occupational therapist, 4 times yearly for 20 minutes, well, then it's, consultation services with an occupational therapist 4 times yearly for 20 minutes. That doesn't change. And the same way it's delivered for special ed students will be the same way it's delivered for students with Section 504 plans. So, and outside of that, whatever kind of supports they get vis-a-vis the classroom and pedagogy, well, that's going to continue as well, whether it's virtual or hybrid. So if I get extra time for a test, I'm going to get extra time for a test, no matter what platform I take it on. If I get copies of notes, I get copies of notes. If, I get to consult with the school psychologist to make sure I'm staying on top of my work and staying organized, well, that's going to continue as well. So once again, those plans are valid plans, they're legal documents, and if that's the accommodations that the committee recommended for the student, they exist as well. Unlike special ed students, which have much more of a heavy focus on material supports vis-a-vis people, that changes the whole dynamic. But yes, to that question, Section 504 students, the plans are valid. I read them all the summertime. The building principals are getting them out to the teachers vis-a-vis school tool, as they would typically do, just so every teacher now has a copy of the students who have a 504 plan and/or an IEP at their disposal to ensure that, in fact, they're meeting the needs as specified in that plan. So with that, I'm going to, it's about 11 o'clock. So that's going to end our presentation. The rest of the questions here we're going to answer and post just like we were doing last week on the different 15 presentations. We are doing this again at 4 p.m. So if you want to come back and ask another question, by all means, please come back. In addition, I left up these 2 slides as far as the assistant directors. If you've got any questions, please email your assistant director. You can email me directly. I'd be happy to answer them, any questions you have. But as I indicated, an IEP is an IEP. Virtual, in person, that doesn't change anything at all. So I hope this information was useful. Like I said, we'll get back to the questions. And if there was something that was truly, a burning question that I didn't have a chance to answer, please send me an email. I've been answering emails from parents. I would once again ask, be patient, because I tend to get a lot of emails, so it may take a day or two. But I would definitely try to answer that as best I can, okay? So with that, I'm going to sign off. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us here today. We're about a week and a half away, so here we come. And like I said, if you have any questions, by all means, just give a call. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, Darren, so you're at the top, baby. How's it sound?